Good evening. Good evening. What a wonderful, beautiful crowd. Thank you for being here for the Mayor's Town Hall. Thank you for attending, and thank you for those who are watching remotely. I have to start out with just a quick story. In the old courthouse, there was an alderman meeting during the time I was not political or anything. I was going to speak about the hospital. And I walk into the chambers, and there are all these people wearing red shirts. And I unfortunately was wearing a red shirt at the time also, because they were wearing red shirts because they did not want to be annexed. So Mr. Howard is looking at me like, Mayor Howard, look, why am I wearing a red shirt? So when I got up to the podium, I said, I want to thank all the people here in red shirts for supporting the hospital tonight. So he forgave me for that, and I want to thank y'all sincerely for being here. And we've had a great day in Southport. We had our budget meeting this morning. We did interviews this afternoon for committees, and now the town hall. The way it'll work, you each get 5 minutes to speak. You ask questions. We have a back and forth dialogue, so that's what is good about this. Is our time to listen, my time to listen. And I'm grateful for that. To my left is Maureen Meehan. She's Director of Planning Services. To my right, you probably know also, is City Manager Noah Saldo. Again, the topic this evening, historic preservation, a proposed zoning map overlay establishing the Southport Historical District. And you may have seen this in the pilot. This is for next week, the June 2nd public hearing, which will be on Tuesday, 6 o'clock here. So this is in addition to that. Why Town Hall? From my website, I would like to read during last year's campaign, which I posted at that time. My vision is straightforward but profound: to restore civility to our civic life, to preside over meetings that are orderly, respectful, and informative, and to ensure that every citizen feels heard. When difficult or controversial issues arise, and they will, I will not stifle debate or push decisions behind closed doors. Instead, I will call for dedicated town hall meetings where the collective voice of the people can rise in a chorus of democracy, treated always with dignity and respect. True leadership does not fear discussion, it embraces it, because truth and wisdom emerge most clearly when neighbors deliberate together. So again, I thank you all for being here this evening. Madam Clerk, if you would start with the first person, please.
Ms. B.J. Gorman.
Just state your name, make sure the microphone's on first, state your name, address. We know the topic.
Okay. My name is B.J. Gorman, and I live at 406 West Brunswick Street in Southport. As an owner and an occupant of property in the historic district, I am adamantly opposed to this overlay district that's been proposed. I strongly oppose it, and certainly hope that the Board of Aldermen will see the reasoning behind it with all the conversations and the discussions that we've had. Starting in 1792, 334 years ago, when this city was formed, I mean, look where we are now. We all can see what has been done and how the town has been taken care of. And this is due to the property owners who are concerned and care about their property. It's so far, I think we've done a pretty good job, and I would like to hope that people will see that. They sure do come. They know we're here. So it would be nice to know that they actually realize that we really care about this city, and we want it to look good, and we want it to remain as it is, or as close as it can be. There's going to be change, and we all know that. As a Historic Preservation Commission acts as a judicial quasi-judicial role, many of the exterior changes will require homeowners to seek permission through a certificate of appropriateness before they can move forward. Having firsthand experience in dealing with a quasi-judicial board, it is not for the faint of heart, I promise you. After many uncertain months, approximately $50,000 in legal fees, and a less than forthright city employee, and stress beyond explanation, my husband and I were finally able to save the newly constructed addition to our 1893 home. Unlike the city, the state of North Carolina recognized our completed project as historically contributing. Current homeowners should not have to face new restrictions, new costs, and reduce control for their own property. When we moved here, we purposely moved into an area that did not have a homeowners association. We wanted to live downtown, but not with a homeowners association. Excuse me. What this basically does is put you in a homeowners association, and unfortunately, the people in control of what you do don't live in the district. So it's unfair to the property owners. I urge the city to reject this proposed historic district overlay and defend the rights of the current property owners. I thank you for your time, Mayor, and I hope that all of you will realize the board, the aldermen, when they do vote for it, that they vote for what is right for the city and good for the city, and also for the individuals that actually elected them to office to represent them. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Mr. John Bove.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak and ask questions. My name is John Bove. I live at 305 East West Street in the proposed historic district. And I guess I have some questions. I'm not sure if we can go back and forth with questions and answers, but I wanted to focus my questions to Mo Meehan about the state requirements for a historic district versus what we hear about an advisory committee in lieu of a quasi-judicial unit to administer the historic district. Generally, I am not opposed to the historic district, really for the same reason that the people who are opposed to it say. We like Southport, we like the way it is. We don't really want to see it change. In fact, there were signs to that effect for years here, don't change Southport. I think if we really want to be a serious historic area, we do have to meet the standards that the state sets for a historic district, right? We can't just say we're historical, or we can't have a pretend historical district, I guess. And I would appreciate, Mo, if you could maybe outline for the group generally what the state standards are and how close these proposed Southport standards are to the minimum requirement that the state has. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So to become a local historic district, the local community must decide whether they want to do, it's a zoning district. So you either do a new zoning district for all the properties with uses that are considered, or you do a zoning overlay, which keeps the existing zoning districts of the properties within the city or the local district portion. And then there's the overlay that then adds the added standards for the local historic preservation commission. The state requires that the commission be established. There needs to be rules of procedure, and there needs to be an ordinance that is approved by the governing board for the local district itself. And at the same time, the HPC, the Historic Preservation Commission, also must prepare principles and standards that must be followed during the consideration of exterior changes to the buildings or any alterations or movements of the properties. So that is this how of the process works for the for establishing a local district itself. So the standards are part of it. They do outline what needs to be included in the standards, what is considered as exterior features, the standards that have been considered and are recommended by the Historic Preservation Commission. They include those minimum necessary for the standards to be considered for a local district. There are some other options that the state says that can be included, but they were originally considered and then have been removed from the existing edition draft that we have now for the standards.
Did that help answer the question, sir? You were good with that? Thank you. All right. Madam Clerk.
Ms. Roberta Dozier,
Thanks for having us here tonight, Mr. Mayor, Joe Pat, and Mo, and Sal, Salvo, Noah. I'm a resident of Southport, Roberta Dozier at 210 Westmore Street. I've been a long-time resident of Southport, seeing many changes over the years. The first stoplight, many changes over time, was a fishing village, antiques, tourists, and now we're on the map. Southport with its natural beauty, the trees, the water views, the lovely oaks, the quaintness of our town brought us people to live here. Those people who have bought homes in Southport that have restored them to their natural beauty had a vision that they should be saved and revived. The beauty of the water and the views of the oak trees are the hopes and dreams that we are here to enjoy, the peace and the harmony, the quaintness, and not to have changes in our community that are the reasons why we are here tonight. We are in much need of rules and regulations and guidelines, but let's work together to follow as we have done without restrictions to keep our town the happiest little seaside town and not to be divisive that drives and divides us all. Flowers also have regulations and rules. The hydrangea may be pink, blue, magenta, purple. It's how you test, it's how you treat them that determines the colors. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Bob Menches,
Bob Menches, 406 Clarendon Avenue. I thought this was a Wolf Pack Club meeting. I'm sorry. Luckily, I'm prepared regardless. But anyways, yeah. So I don't live in the historic overlay proposed historic overlay district. I live in the Snob district. That's slightly north of Brown Street, by the way, and proud of it. One thing that really concerns me about the process that's been established for the commission and what could happen is, while I'm not in the district now, there's nothing to say I couldn't be in an overlay district in the future, just like what's been discussed before about the yacht basin not being in the district. And I remember Chief Jude discussing at one point saying, well, we can add them later. Well, there's nothing to say that they can't add my house or any other house that they think, or they could go another block, or maybe they go 2 blocks, or maybe we gerrymander down Lord Street or gerrymander down Burrington or something just to include homes that are historic but not in the overlay district. So that kind of concerns me. I don't like the idea of the quasi judicial process. I think that that's really probably unmanageable by the town and the district. I don't really have a trust in those folks to all come together because the guidelines are way too subjective. There is a pretty decent list of what you can and can't do, but I hear may in there too much, may be approved, may be okay, may not be okay. So that's way too subjective for a document where you're basically telling people what they can and can't do. So I think that's a real problem. Thanks a lot.
Somebody wanting to tell somebody what how to do this. Have you never done it? You gotta put somebody in that board that knows what construction is. Where the old stuff is in this county and look at it and say, okay, you need this. That's what I feel like it is. Not all these rules and regulations that, you know what I'm saying? Does it pertain? Then you got to get back to why do we have a building? Why do we have a covenant? And then with what she said, why do we have a planning board? You have to go to do any building in this county, you have to go to the planning board for you get to go. There's a lot of steps you need to understand and coastal building. Do what you're trying to do with this. That's true. Very good. Does make sense. Thank you, Jody. Who's next, Madam Clerk?
Larry Cabral.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having this. This is, I think, really important. Larry Cabral, 308 West. So I want to have a little exchange. I just want someone, excuse me, to explain to me what the difference between this and an HOA is. I'll just, is there a difference between this and an HOA is my question.
So this is a quasi-judicial process, so that it is a very objective consideration of property. So so that the HPC will have to look at the application that is brought forward and will have to ensure that there is competent and substantial evidence that these standards are met to meet the characteristics of the district. So,
Hey,
Jody, if I may, please. So then the HOA will have guidelines that they have to follow, that someone will have to come to a board and then also have to show that they meet or not. And then the board then has no legal authority. They can just make a decision however they feel it
so the
fits.
only difference is you guys are a legal entity as opposed to a homeowners association.
And it's more objective because it does have to show that the evidence is there, that they meet the standards for the characters.
So the standards in the HOA, though, aren't they set by the board, and aren't there fines, et cetera, that have to be, standards have to be met in that HOA?
Yes, they do.
So,
yes.
but again, I'm not beating a dead horse. So my other question would be, in an HOA, I believe that all the board members are residents of that area and elected by those homeowners. I think we're getting, how many of the board members are currently in the historic district?
I believe 3 are.
Out of?
7.
Okay. So we're having regulation without representation, essentially. I mean, oh, that's.
The biggest
problem I have with the HBC is it's after the fact. His question is the HOA. When you get an HOA, you buy into it. You know what you're getting into.
Well, yes.
This
correct.
is after the fact. So coming to us, who some of us have owned these properties for, in my case, 7 generations. And the fact Miss Roberta's here speaking tonight, she shouldn't be doing that. My dad, he shouldn't be here. It's pretty sad that we're at this point where we have expressed so much concern and given so many other ideas. And instead of them being listened to, you know what? A gavel was slammed because they didn't want to hear what they had to say. Paul was here and he did it. I mean, someone who's actually put this place on the map. I read an article just a month ago, a place that you have to eat on your bucket list, a restaurant on your bucket list. A guy that put this place on the map. And when he expressed his concern, a gavel was slammed so hard, so many times, I was in astonishment. And I sit on this board. If there's any rule that I could say that we need to pass is whatever wood that gavel's made out of, every house in Southport should be made out of it. Because I guarantee you this, no damn hurricane's going to blow it down. So, good points.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As most of you know, I only gavel twice, in the beginning of the meeting and at the end, and that's it. Thank you for your comments. Madam Clerk.
James Carroll.
James Carroll, 202 West Nash, and I own some other property in the historic district, most prominently 116 North Howe, which is the Ports of Call building. I have a couple questions first. In the worst case scenario, this passes, can standards be added in after it passes? What is the procedure?
The HPC would have to amend the standards, then they would make a recommendation to the board, and then the board would adopt them, the Board of Aldermen.
Okay. With no public input or?
There was always public input allowed at the meetings,
Okay.
and it would be, we would make sure that everyone knew that there was going to be changes considered at the meeting.
Okay. Second question, is there a particular historic property that is in the proposed overlay that has already been demolished that you are disappointed that it's no longer there?
No comment on that one. I don't.
I hear a lot about what's being built there, but I don't really hear a lot about historic preservation.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm administrator of the program.
Sure, sure.
Staff.
It's historic preservation, but it seems to be fear mongering about what could be built there. So if we're worried about what could be built there, let's tackle that. Let's don't punish the people that are doing it right. Couple things. The Ports of Call building, Betsy and I did a renovation of that building. We didn't change anything about the building structure. We wanted it to fit in with its neighborhood, but we wanted to update it. It was kind of disappearing, camouflage, because it was just so worn out. We added cornice across the top of the building. We added dental molding trim across the first floor of the building. We added Southport bows over the exterior doorways, half columns on the side of each door. Standard 2.2.7 disallows all those. We painted the masonry. The masonry was so faded, it was not even attractive masonry. It was that veneer. We painted the masonry. 2.3.9 disallows that. We added gooseneck lights across the top. 1.3.1 is the standard that affects that. It's probably allowed, but it's a pretty subjective standard. It may be allowed, but it was not original. It has to do with how powerful the lights are and some other issues. We wanted to keep the historic doors that were leading into Ports of Call, but the transom above was sagging. So we couldn't take the doors off, replace the transom and put the doors back on. The code enforcement would not allow it. So we had to change the whole front of that structure, even though we wanted it to be original. We added a new porch on the rear of the building for the apartment tenants. There was just a rickety stairwell that went straight up there. So we added a nice, beautiful porch across the back. Standard 2.5.8 disallows that. I feel like there's a lot more to maintaining a property than just changing its siding when it rottens out painting it in its current structure. You know, these are living things. Think about every house you've ever been in. 30 years ago, nobody had outdoor kitchens, nobody had outdoor porches. Things evolve, and we want to make changes. So that's all I have to say about that. Also, I am of the understanding that Lo Davis, who's an alderman, presented her property to the HPC board with pictures, a nice presentation, and asked if all the things she had done to her property over the years would be allowed. She was told they would. Within 5 minutes, I wasn't there, but I got the presentation, and I sent an email to Lo and to Robert Carroll, who was there. Within 5 minutes, I was able to find that changing the front window configuration on our house would be disallowed by standards 2.4.6 and 2.4.8. Adding a balcony, an upstairs porch combo to her house would be disallowed by standard 2.7.5. Adding a skylight would be disallowed by standard 2.7.5 as well. So I hope that aldermen that have changed their own property would not vote disallowing their next door neighbor to do the same thing to their property. So my final comment is just maintaining a property is not simply keeping it exactly as it is forever. Thank you.
In answer to your question about a historic building being torn down, I stood in front of the bulldozers when they tore down Dozier Hospital. I hated to see it go. It was in 1930, but it was time for it to go. So yeah, please.
I was told recently that there was a historic property that was torn down next to Casada Park. It was a house that was donated to the city, and the city tore it down. None of you were here. This was before everybody else.
Yeah.
But the city had the opportunity to save a historic property and didn't do it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Carl Ward.
The alderman will see this. Other citizens will see it. Some of the aldermen did not want to attend. They had other things they needed to do. But Paul Gross is in the back, and so that's. And then there's the public hearing, which they all will be here.
Hi, my name's Carl Ward. I live at 231 North Caswell Avenue, and I'm sorry I feel underdressed here and all, but I'll try to do better next time and all. But recently there was an article in the Port City Daily, and Joe Pat was mentioned in it. It was about your next door neighbor with the bakery and all. And in that article, you said that you would eventually like to take your property, do some retail on the bottom, and put some residential on the top of it and all. So I'm assuming would tear the building down. You can build it all the way out to the sides of the property line. As long as you set the front and rear setbacks, everything's good to go. You can build up to whatever height's allowed. So let's take that property, let's move it a few blocks down the street and put it in the historical district. You go to the Historical Preservation Committee, you give them your plans. Sorry, Joe Pat, you can't build out to the lot lines. You've got to put this in the same footprint. And of course, you got to wait a year before you can tear the house down, the building down. But I'm not sure if you can put a 2-story on that property or not. We'll have to get back to you on it. So there's 2 chapters to this story. First chapter is, we're sorry, there's not another 2-story house around, 2-story building around. So you got to keep the same footprint, and it can only be a 1-story house, a 1-story building, and it's got to look like the building is there. And no offense, Joe Pat, but that's an ugly building, So. So now, but I'm feeling good. So the next chapter is, okay, you can build a 2-story building. So you put that 2-story building up, but instead of having this nice retail down, 4 apartments up top, you've got a smaller retail down and 2 apartments up top. So you get those and all. And so we move your property back to where it belongs. Why, and not picking on you or saying anything, but why are you any specialer? What makes you better? Because you've got some property that's a few blocks down on the wrong side of this imaginary line. You're just taking away from tax base. It's taken away from people, and I just don't think it's right. And also, prior to the election, you called me asking for my support, and you said that this had torn the town apart, and you weren't in favor of it, and that if it came to a vote and the vote was split and you had to change it, it was up to you, that you would not vote for it. And I hope you still feel that way. And I like you, and I'm not putting you on the spot, but I'm I will be telling that part of the story at the Board of Aldermen meeting there. I just wanted to give you a heads up. So thank you for your time.
So, 2 things. With the reporter, I said that property had the capability of having retail on the bottom and residential up top. I never said that Tish and I are planning to do that, and we aren't, and we're not. I mean, like you said, look how ugly that building is. I mean, it's still there. In fact, we do yard work around it. We're fixing it up and that type thing. So that was not the accurate quote. And secondly, I have said publicly that I would not support anything, and not just HPC, I would not want to support anything that would tear our city apart. And in terms of HPC, that call was in 2025 when we talked, and it was at a time when the HPC, the way, the form it was in, it was not in good form. So, and I'm not hedging anything. I do not want to vote for something that's going to tear our city apart. And I've also said, and you've heard me say it, I will do the right thing for Southport. But tonight I'm here to listen. And Carl, thank you for your comments, and I'm glad. I'm just very grateful that you all are here. But let's continue the dialogue and the questions. Madam Clerk.
Bob Lambert.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bob Lambert. I live at 109 West Nash Street here in Southport. If you're not familiar with the location, it is adjacent to the car building, insurance building that they tore down probably 3 years ago. And I just want to say something about historic preservation. I have restored and renovated 4 historic homes in my lifetime, and I'm very proud of the work that I've done. And never in the time that I've been restoring homes have I ever had a problem with a historic preservation society or commission telling me what I can and can't do. What we did was we got together and we compromised on what was allowed and what wasn't. And they had very good suggestions. The last house I renovated before we moved here when I asked them what was allowable, what they said was, all you have to do is the front of your house that faces the street, we'd like you to keep that historically accurate. What you do behind that, we don't have a problem with. And I thought that was reasonable. One of the nice things that they did at that time too was also gave us some tax credits to help us to make those improvements and help with some of the cost. So what I'd like to say is that historic preservation does a lot more than just save old buildings. It anchors our community. It's a unique identity. It revitalizes the local economy. By protecting our architectural heritage, we honor the stories that built our neighborhoods while creating a sustainable, vibrant future. Communities across the country have faced rapid development. Supporting local preservation efforts has been more vital now than ever. I'd like to talk about just three reasons why saving our historic spaces matter. And the first one is economic growth. Historic rehabilitation is a proven economic driver. Restoring older properties creates more local jobs, keeps more money in the community than new construction does. Furthermore, historic districts often attract heritage tourism, which we rely on heavily in this town, which directly supports local restaurants, shops, and small businesses. A bigger subject is environmental sustainability. The greenest building is the one that is already built. Demolishing older structures and sending materials to landfills carries a heavy environmental cost. By adaptively reusing historic buildings, we reduce carbon emissions and minimize waste. And thirdly, preserving our shared heritage. Historic buildings are the physical manifestation of our past. They give our towns a sense of place and continuity, separating distinct character-rich communities from homogeneous, small, sprawling development. Historic preservation is not about freezing a city in time. It's about managing growth while keeping the heart and soul of our community intact. I've heard a lot of good comments, and I've heard concerns, serious concerns from all of you. But I think what needs to happen here is, I think the Historic Commission needs to step back, and I think that everyone needs to get together and find a compromise that is equitable for everyone, and stop with the overreaction and the name calling and the things that divide us. We don't need that. We need to come together and find something that works for everyone. So I'm proposing a new tagline. The old tagline was, don't change Southport, let Southport change you. But my new tagline is, don't harm the charm. So thank you very much.
All right, don't harm the charm. There we go. Madam Clerk.
Is it Jenny Brill or Jerry Brill? Jenny, okay, Miss Jenny.
Thank you. Ditto to my neighbor that just expressed himself so well. I mainly wanted to share that I grew up in a town that had historical limitations, not just in my town, but in the neighboring towns as well. And much stricter than what is being proposed now. You couldn't paint your house or really do any changes without the town approving it. And 65 years later, I go home and it's only better. It hasn't been commercialized or exploited in a way that has changed the feeling of the town and the neighboring towns as well. And I see the benefits of there being some stipulations or regulations or even just conversation and awareness as to that we have something really special here and how do we maintain that. I have a feeling that we all want the same thing in a lot of ways. That's why we came here. That's why people come to Southport and love Southport, because of the heart that is there and the history that is there. And it's shown through the property and the architecture that exposes that history that we're all attracted to here. So I think that I wanted to share that perspective, but also I also hope that we can come to an agreement. There isn't a right or a wrong. I think there's just a love for Southport that we want to maintain. And by doing so, it's almost respecting the history and the landmarks of our town that, you know, people walk around all the time and comment on people's houses and how beautiful they are. And I don't think anybody wants to change that. I live at 306 East West Street. Forgot to mention that. And when we bought our house, we bought it because I wanted an old house. I love the history. I love the richness of the architecture. And we've had to do a lot of work to our house since we've owned it. And I hope that we have respected that history and the life that precedes when we owned the house, you know, since we've bought the house. I'm very proud of it, and I'm proud of my neighbors' houses. And one of my favorite things to do in Southport is walk around and really admire and love the houses that make Southport what it is today. So I hope we can move forward in a way that is that it has a common good in everybody's mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Siegfried De Schmidt.
Good evening. I didn't prepare a speech, so I just had some questions. It's the first time I come to a town hall, so I hope we can have a dialogue. Siegfried De Schmidt, 319 West Brunswick Street. I went to meetings of the HPC, so they know my position. They know why I am against it. But I do have questions for each of you. Starting perhaps with, who should I start with? I will keep you, Mayor, till the end. So, but Noah, let me start with you. In February, March of this year, we did a budget survey. You asked all the residents, taxpayers to let you know what was a priority for us. And in the beginning of that survey, we had 4 or 5 priorities that were predefined and on which each of the respondents could say, this is what is important to me. One of those priorities was to preserve the historic character of Southport. Could you share with the audience of the 348 or 350 respondents, how many people basically said that this is a priority for us now that we have gone 4 years through the HPC meetings and know much more what our intention is with it. So What was the response on that question?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were very, put their efforts into the survey to definitely bring about awareness for historic preservation and wanting to respect the historic preservation of the city and what had been. Certainly those were not all in support of HPC or all opposed to HPC. So it was a general characterization that I think has been expressed tonight, that whether you are for HPC or against HPC, there's an overwhelming sense of sentiment throughout the city that we all want to support the historical character of the city. And that was certainly expressed in the survey.
Okay, I think that's a very political answer that you give. So thank you for that, Noah. I will help with the response. Of the 350 respondents, 12 people said that the historic preservation of Southport was a priority for them. That was 4% and a bit more. So that's number one. And I think people responded that way because they know now exactly what we intend to do. So that's one. That was the question for you, Noah. Thank you. Ms. Mahan, a question for you too. There is a lot said about Senate Bill 382, which many people believe is downzoning and would basically prohibit the city of enforcing this overlay unless, according to that state bill, there is 100% agreement of the impacted residents. So we will see going forward whether or not that is true. But the question that I had thinking about it is, I can be wrong, so correct me. I don't believe that the planning board has had the opportunity to spend a session on discussing the standards from the HPC and to make recommendations to the HPC about how the UDO could help in addressing some of the concerns and some of the protections and some of the enhancements, perhaps even that could be brought to the UDO to help find an alternative which would prevent us from having to wear red shirts tonight. So has there been a meeting of the planning board to discuss the standards of the HPC, and have you then been able to provide recommendations to the HPC on what could already be protected by making amendments to the current UDA rules?
Yes, thank you. The planning board did review the standards and the local district map itself, the district. They had some comments, but it was really more they were looking at the district itself. We have not had any conversations about how there could be some things in the standards that could be taken care of in the UDO. We have not.
Okay, thank you. So taking a step back, wouldn't it be, or shouldn't have we expected that the planning board would have been more involved in helping the commission in determining what we could do through the UDO rather than creating a new set of standards with a quasi-judicial approach, which basically is what we are opposing?
The design standards and the UDO, while they do work together because anything that is built within the city overall must meet the standards of the UDO.
Mm-hmm.
The standards are not meant to replace the UDO in any way. Mm-hmm. There are very specific elements that the general statutes outline that must be looked at and considered for any exterior changes or alteration of a building within or structure within the local district, right. And those must be met. So those also still have to be considered in the standards, whether they are, if there are requirements in the UDO or not.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Mayor, last question is for you. I think somebody referred already to promises made before the election, but in the conversations we had, each time you referred to your commitment to the peacefulness of Southport, to the unity of Southport. I remember sitting here in a meeting of the aldermen a year ago, where the input that people had given based on a survey we had done at that time of people signing against the HPC standards, that some of the people on that board were ridiculizing us because we forced people to sign for it and people didn't understand what they signed for it. So we are a year later now, and I'm sure, like all of us, you drive through town. My question is, when you see all the signs, do you think that Southport today is divided or is united behind the overreach that the city potentially is going to vote for?
Southport is united in that it cares for the historic character of our city and the preservation of the village atmosphere. The method of preserving that may not be agreed upon. That's the difference. But the love and the care that you have for our city is the same, whether someone is for the Historic Preservation District or does not favor it or is against it. And so I think the first 6 months of being mayor, first, I guess 5 months being mayor, I think we are having peace. We're having good discussions. We're working through this. And this is part of that process. All of you being here tonight is amazing. I really didn't expect a large crowd. I figured you would wait and come to the public hearing, but I wanted to give our citizens an opportunity. So in answer to your question, I think we all want the same thing, but the method we do not, everyone doesn't agree on. And that's why I'm here. I'm listening, and I hear you. I see the signs, and we will work through this. We'll get on the other side of this, and I believe everyone will be pleased.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Fred Fiss.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Fred Fiss. I live at 216 North Atlantic Avenue. And I live in a historic house, and I truly love living there. I truly love looking around the town and looking at the fabric and the character of the historic areas. That's part of the reason I do live here. It warms my heart to see it. Also, for the past 15 years, I've specialized in renovating historic homes, quite often turning them inside out to make them more modern in terms of energy efficiency, sustainability, and part of my business has been making houses normal again. Over the decades, people do some interesting things, and sometimes it's out of necessity, like closing in a front porch or taking a 900-foot cottage and doing an expansion out the back that goes up to 2 stories. And if you walk around Southport, you can see those kind of examples. And part of what I had done as a contractor, and I'm retired now, so I have no financial gain in the game. I don't care about that part anymore. Part of what I've done is unboogered houses that people made changes to. They had good intentions, and I truly believe that everybody has good intentions. I take a lot of pride in what I do, architectural design, preserving the history, I'm not an expert. I think a lot of pretty highly of what I do. And I smile as I walk around town and I see some of the houses that I've impacted and preserved and returned to the original character. So I'm not perfect. Architects and developers, they're not perfect. They do some interesting things too. And in their mind, they think they're overachieving, hitting a home run, and it gets to a subjective area. I've had cases as a builder where I've had clients that want to create this fantasy kind of a look because they think it's the best thing. I wish during those years that I had the HPC and a Bible of sorts that are recommendations, guidelines, things that are appropriate, things that are not appropriate. One thing I want to emphasize is when you read the 100 pages, if you have read it, I've read it. Anybody else read it? Okay. 103. So when I read the document, it's a set of guidelines. If you take it as black and white, literally, it could be confining with what one does with their property. But when I read the guidelines, there are exceptions to the rules. And what the main exception that's in there, the word congruency comes up numerous times. So a case like a house that goes up 2 stories, originally it was 1 story. If it's congruent in the historical character that is there, my understanding is the Historic Preservation Committee would approve that. If they're, I'm going to continue, all right? So if there was only 1 window on the front of a house and somebody wants more light into their living room, and there are other examples where living rooms have multiple windows, it's congruent with the neighborhood. The HPC is more than likely going to approve that. Wow, I was having fun. Thank you for my time to speak. And yes, I am in support of the HPC overlay.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Paul Swenson.
Paul Swenson, 107 North Atlantic Avenue. I had a speech. I put it in my pocket. I want to get something off my chest. And this is the most important document that's come across this board. And I've been here 36 years. This is the real deal. Very, very important. And I think everybody will agree with me. What I find odd is you had the HPC put a document together. It took them over 3 years to put it together. They just did the final draft in the beginning of May. I was there. And now all of a sudden, thank you, we're having a town hall. And next Tuesday, we're having a public hearing. The HPC board had 3 years to study the document. And now the citizens of Southport have practically just 1 month. And then the Board of Aldermen are going to vote for it. I find it odd that the date that was the best date was June 11th, June 2nd for the public hearing, and you're going to vote on it June 11th. We were all thinking in this group that it was going to happen probably in July because the big issue right now for the Board of Aldermen is the budget. I want to know how the Board of Aldermen can study this whole document, which is 100 pages, and do the budget at the same time. And how can all the citizens absorb 100 pages of documentation? It's hard enough if you go to every meeting. Okay, now that I've said that, look at my time. There is one thing I'm glad about. I'm really glad about it. And that is that this town never had an HPC. Never had one. I came, and the reason why is if you look around this town is absolutely gorgeous. It's not only historic, it's actually really pretty. Everybody has done an amazing job in this town. And I wish the whole board was here tonight to look around at all these people here. These people and the people that have been generational in this town have made this town what it is. They brought it up and made it what it is today. And that's why you wonder why we're upset. We're upset because we have set the standard. We have brought this town together and made it our. We don't need an HPC. We really don't need an HPC. When I came here in 1990, this town was broken down. There were houses that were empty, porches falling off, railings falling off. It just it doesn't look like it does today. Why do we need an HPC? We've done it. We've done all this. Anyway, I'm going to cut it because I'm running out of words, but I did have one statement in my letter that I wrote. If I can find it here. Bear with me. It's got it stuck together here somehow. I had an epidural shot this morning, so I'm a little high. Yeah, I'm vibrating. Okay. Anyway, I thought this is appropriate. The HPC is so restrictive. It will not allow for creative flexibility when restoring an older home or commercial structure. I cannot comprehend why the goal of the HPC is to freeze the overlay district in a time warp, where the goal should be to breathe new life into an older home and a commercial structure and not relegate their facade to a life of boredom and antiquity. If this board wants to learn what Southport residents really think of a historic overlay, propose a plan to expand the overlay over the whole city and have the state port pilot make it front page news, and you will have your answer. It'll be a resounding no. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess everyone will be lining up at your doctor's office tomorrow for an epidural. So thank you, Sweeney, as always. Madam Clerk.
Davy Heron.
I've already thrown this book down 3 times today because this is very important to me. And I want to thank all of you fighting. I'm not a crybaby. And you are the reason for me being as mad as I am. Positively. Southport's been a thorn in my side for 3-4 years now. And this is going to go into the historic deal. I live in the ETJ. My family owns property here on the river. And I got fined $111,000 from something he had done when he was my backdoor neighbor. before, well, he was my backdoor neighbor, then became mayor and made this tree ordinance and never let me know one thing about the tree ordinance. Never. There's nothing says that I have to read the paper. Nothing says that I have to have go to a board meeting to protect my rights. But you wrote the tree ordinance and they fined me that kind of money. Mayor Alt came to my house finally after 4 months of me stewing every day, and said, I see what you're talking about. I see what you're talking about. But Mark Spencer, right over there, he came to me 2 or 3 weeks. I appreciate it. But anyway, there's never was a letter. You never had a letter sent out. You never had a public hearing. Nothing. Same thing. If I lived out of town right now, I wouldn't know this was going on because you haven't notified anybody that had property. Well, the city, and I'm not going to say you, but the city should have notified anybody having property in this town. I've not gotten a letter, but I know about it. My son's on the board, on the historic board. But anyway, no letter. Code guy, I understand the code guy was coming in our neighborhood 2 or 3 times a day. So I went out and put red flags on every oak tree I had in my yard, and I got a bunch of them. I sat in a chair for 2 days waiting on him to show up. Thank God he didn't show up. But our development started at Smith Woods in 1984. We borrowed $1 million at 11% interest. And we knew that Southport would be one day, we would be in Southport one day. And we paid it back by doing one thing, selling lots. I had a tractor, chainsaw. I cut trees. I sold lots, paid it back in 2 years. And it was well worth it because I got to learn a lot doing that. Now, look what's happened. Here I am, I get fined that kind of money. They drop my fine, but they still fine my daughter $24,000. And I had to go to a public, to a variance board meeting to see that. That was ridiculous. When I had actually been one of the developers that developed the property. And the lot that I got fined for was a lot that you used to drag your trees to and burn them. They said I cleared it. Yeah, I did. I cleared it in 1987, about a third of an acre. So anyway, now look what I'm up against. We own land on the water. And the history of this town, my parents, my family, and the Harper family have probably been the 2 biggest taxpayers in this town until through the last 15 years. They pay more taxes than anybody, and this is how I get treated. I'm about to run out, so I've got to forget a lot of what I had to say. But I hate to get choked up like this because this is my family heritage. But this historic deal, we rode around, my wife and I rode around, saw 75 to 80 houses that are 1-story, and nobody really mentioned, except Paul, the fact that a 1-story building is really in trouble. And there's 75 to 80 houses in this historic overlay that you're talking about that are not going to be able to do a darn thing with them. And that's going, you talk about tax base. When they look at how much it's going to be worth with a 2-story building or with a 1-story building, you're going to lose a lot of tax base. And let me say this, if you do this, our land, our motel down there, which my grandmother built, has been flooded 4 times from city water, not from salt water, city water. And if you think that I'm going to lay down and take it, when you making that land worth 5 cents on the dollar for what it's worth, you got another thought coming, because I will fight you.
Thank you. He always gets teary when he sees me, so we're good. Madam Clerk.
Jim Lightbourne,
So after all this, I just have 5 boring questions. So I've heard tell that if we invoke the Historic Preservation Commission and the Historic District, there'll be demands on the staff. So could you talk a little bit about the increased staff that you'll need to work with the commission and then do the enforcement and sort of what cost that would be to the city? Should I go through all my 5 questions and then you'll take them? Okay, so that's number 1. We've heard about this being an advisory commission or process, and I'm curious how effective that would be. So has Southport ever had a situation like this where you set up guidelines and have them advisory, or other cities to do it? Is there any way to learn from the UDO or the, I hate to say tree ordinance, that experience there where the advisory process would work and how you think that would work? The third one is it's been suggested that the city has not followed the correct or legal procedures in the process of setting up this historic district or getting us to this stage. So could you speak to that? Have we followed the right procedures? What do you see as staff the greatest challenge in implementing and administering this historic district from a sort of a staff perspective? And then the 5th one, I guess I added one more. The 5th one is the potential liability to the city when trying to administer and enforce the historic district. And then the 6th one was a follow-up to a question before. How much do the current, I should know this, but do the current draft go beyond the minimum than the state says for historic districts? You said something along those lines, Mo, and I didn't quite catch it. Yeah, thanks. Can I leave?
You can't. I'll take the staff question first. So we have staff in place between Mo, her staff that can administer this. There is no proposed staffing increase in this coming year's budget. I think it's a wait and see what will be needed in the future, depending upon what the actual workload looks like as we begin implementation. So I don't foresee any new staff in the immediate term. Long term, it's planning out what that looks like once implementation actually happens, to then go and reassess that, what that staffing level looks like.
Can I respond?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a great answer. But it's not really what I was looking at, because we've been thinking about this for some time now. And I would think that you're a little beyond those initial thoughts.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. The staff in my mind that is in place now can certainly handle this. I don't foresee there being, a tsunami wave of, the historic homes are what they're going to be. So it's not like the historic district is going to have additional homes that's going to need to be attended to. So I think staff can certainly handle that capacity now. So I don't foresee a tsunami that staff would be overwhelmed with. So I think from the staffing perspective, we will be good. Certainly in the context of growth, as we grow as a city, we always reassess that. But I don't think long term or short term, I don't think we'll need new staff. I'll hit the legal end of it as well. We have followed all the legal requirements as set forth in the state statute that provides for historic standards and commission. So we have met those legal requirements. The public hearing that will be on Tuesday that we have also held in the past as part of that requirement. So we have met those requirements as laid out in the statute. There is some debate as well as does the Senate Bill 382, the downzoning bill, does that prohibit the district? There is debate certainly within the legal community whether that is applicable to the HPCs and if that overrides the current legislation that's in place to allow HPCs. So from the actual standpoint of what is in statute now to establish HPCs, we have followed that. And there's certainly debate among folks and lawyers on each side that can argue the merits of 382 and what that looks like or not.
Okay.
So I'll turn it over to May for the others.
If I can follow up with a question about the advisory committee question that you proposed. Are you asking if that is something that could work here, or were you talking about the existing commission in their role as their commission, what that they're required to do?
The question was really, have you had any experience in working where you had regulations and then they weren't enforced, but it was advisory? And if you had any experience with that, or other cities have had that, to see how that kind of a process would work.
I personally have not worked with an advisory committee in that sense that you're speaking of. I know that there are some others around the state. I don't know how effective they are. The advisory committee that I know that has been spoken of about in the statutes is a lot different than what a historic commission is.
Mm-hmm.
Its purpose is for a committee to come together in areas that need to have changes to their appearance, that they have dilapidated buildings. They have areas of their city that are, economically distressed. So they come together as a committee and then make recommendations to the governing board on changes to ordinances, how some changes could be made to the city to make it a better place overall. So that's the difference between the advisory committee that in that sense. And speaking about the current draft, I would say that we are following the required elements. We include the required elements that are outlined in the statutes that every set of standards must follow for any historic district in the state of North Carolina. What the difference is each set of standards is going to be built upon the character and what needs to be included in those standards to keep the character of the district as a whole. So you can't take one city's standards and say, well, that looks like great, but it may not work for another just because of the differences in the character and the architectural and the site features and there's a lot this city of Southport has that a lot of other cities do not have, that we're trying to ensure that it is saved or, preserved.
Okay, good, thanks. The liability question?
You mean as far as, are you talking about as far as after the fact, after adoption, and what, whether that's a lawsuit or something like that?
Well, and often when something is trying to be enforced, someone will sue and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So, there's inherent liability with everything we do. So I don't, again, there's lawyers on each side of this that can debate the merits of SB 382 and what that means. If SB 382 is overcome, there could always be, if someone goes to the HPC for a permit, that's denied, that would then go to the Board of Adjustment for an appeal, and then that would go to the Superior Court after that. So there's not necessarily any particular more liability with this than any other zoning matter that we handle. So there's always going to be those appeal options that folks have to then be able to take their redresses to Superior Court to get a permit should HPC and Board of Adjustment deny that.
Okay, thank you. I think I've taken all my time. Thanks.
Madam Clerk.
Cheryl Lapola.
I'm Cheryl Lapola, 316 West Brunswick Street. I've renovated 3 homes in the historic district, $100,000 to $600,000 in value. If you guys can pull out your regulations, page 61. I'm going to jump back to Lo Davis's question about whether the changes to her home would have been allowed. She had one window on the front first level. And of course, she wanted to look at the view. The fisherman who owned the cottage before her didn't care, but she wanted to increase it to about 3 windows wide. Joe Pat, can you read on page 61, section 2.4.6? If you could read it out
Yes,
loud, please.
yes. New windows must match the original overall size, opening area, muntin, and grills. Snap-in grills or grills between glass are not appropriate for windows visible from public view.
Okay, so in your opinion, Mo, could she change her window from 1 to 3 based upon that standard?
I would have you look at standard 2.4.8 that states that new window or door openings shall not alter the historic character of the building or cause damage to historic materials or other significant architectural features. They must be detailed in size to be compatible with the existing structure. The Historic Preservation Commission will take all of the different standards, not single out one, to make sure that any changes that a applicant and property owner comes to the commission and ensures that they can show and they have the evidence and the proof that says, I meet these standards and I am, I've got continuity within this district. And that's the decision that the HPC will have to make in the quasi judicial form. So it's very, you have to follow very strict standards and processes. So I can't look at something and say yes or no, that can happen, because that's not how the process works.
Okay, but you weren't at that meeting, I guess, where she showed the pictures of her home?
I was.
Okay. The other thing was, originally, it was a 1-story cottage. It had a gabled roof on the 2nd floor, and a porch had been added. And so if somebody could read, she asked if that would have been allowed. Could somebody read section 2.5.8, please?
Okay. It is not appropriate to add new porches, entrances, or balconies to page stuck together, to primary elevations or other areas of a building that are seen from the public view if none existed historically. Exceptions may be considered. Applicants shall demonstrate to the HPC that in addition, with different height, scale, size, and massing from the existing structure is congruous with the historic district.
Okay, so it's fairly subjective there, and it kind of depends on who's on the board and how they're feeling that day. I wanted to jump to the staffing issue. Our historic planner, my husband encountered her in the city offices. He went in to talk about a different matter. She asked him where he lived. He said the historic district, 316 Brunswick. And he said, but we don't want a historic district. We think it'll be excessive regulation and it'll be expensive. And she looked at him and she said, you can afford it.
Cheryl, please, you've stated this several times. That is an inaccurate statement.
It is not inaccurate.
And it is not appropriate to bring staff into this, personally.
I think it's appropriate because that's what we would be dealing with. That would be the primary gatekeeper who would be administering these regulations, where we would have to go ask if we could change our lighting fixture. Now, on the standards, the need for approval to change a lighting fixture was removed, but then it was added back in. Was that because of the state requirements? So basically, if you do anything to change the facade of your house, the intent is to freeze facades in time. And if you do anything to change it, you've got to ask permission, and that would include changing our front lights. I think really we can handle that on our own. And that we really just don't need an HPC. We're doing fine. There's no problem. So please focus on problems that are problems. We got stormwater. We got all sorts of issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Debbie Barnes.
Hello, everyone. Debbie Barnes, 425 West Street, and I am in the historic area. Proud of it. I had a lot of questions, but I don't think it's going to be conducive for all my questions. So I'm going to try to change it around a little bit. One of the things I was concerned about that I wanted to talk about was there is a perception, and it follows with what you were saying, but it had nothing to do with that, is that there are people who live in this town who do not, we're not rich. People in this town are just not, or in the historic area, it's a misnomer to think that everybody here has bukus of money to do anything. We have people who have been here for generations and they have inherited their property, as you've heard tonight. There are other people who have come into this town and just bought in at the right time, like us, before it got discovered. We could not afford our home today. One of my concerns then is for the people who cannot afford to do a repair or something in accordance to the regulations, the standards, the guidelines. Guidelines now, standards, they become regulations, okay, when approved with the overlay. For those people, they have no choice. They either have to adhere to that or they have to just not do it. So if they can't afford to do some of the things that are being required, they let things and property go untouched. There was a member of the HPC who talked about Beaufort, South Carolina, and going there and how if you drove back behind the front area that you drive in through, you will see homes where people could not afford to do what the stuff, what was being required. So for me, I'm asking for you to consider if this gets approved and it impacts budgets again, what will be done to help those people who cannot afford to repair the home the way that they're being told they've got to? And will the city help pick that up since the city is requiring it? Will the city be able to use grant money that the city will try to get from the state to be used to help people to pay for these types of repairs? It's just a thought. And I hope you'll consider that because this can be really harsh on some of our citizens. Not everybody has the money in this town that people think in this area. Also, I've mentioned it before in a lot of the HPC meetings, and I'm just going to bring it up again. I was grateful you put in the grandfather clause that I wanted to protect people. How are you going to ensure that what we have should be grandfathered? I brought up before that the inventory list, that the state requires and so forth, that it's not accurate. It doesn't have everybody's renovation dates right. It doesn't have descriptions of homes right. I even know a home that's missing that should be in there. What are we doing to update the inventory and to capture then the things that should be grandfathered? Rebecca Kelly, the alderman, I saw from her questions that were asked after the October workshop that were given to the HPC. They had to have them to them, and I went to that November meeting, and they really didn't address those questions. She had one there where she actually tied the two together. she suggested that the inventory get already. She's
Finish your sentence.
well. Anyway, I think that she had a good point that we should be looking at taking the inventory, working with the citizens, and letting them define what they have that's appropriate or not. When you look at my house, if I had not already done it, would not be approved today because there's nothing on my house that I've done that is appropriate in the document. And I can go through page by page and everything that's listed. I have a pitched roof that was different. I've got skylights. I have vinyl siding that, ooh, I know. I have vinyl siding that even in the description of the inventory, you thought were painted wood shakes. I have an awning with metal stanchions. I have a wrought iron fence, but it's not wrought iron, it's aluminum. I have a lot of things on my house that you would not approve today. And you know, I get so many compliments about our home. It's not historic, but it looks like the cutest little cottage in all of Southport. So
thank you.
So if you don't allow people to bring their own to the table, think about that. That house would not exist today.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Bonnie Bray.
Hi, smaller group. Bonnie Bray, 515 Quartermaster Drive, Southport. My husband and I don't live in the historic district, but when we came here, we stayed because Southport is looking like it does now. Being on the I am a Historic Preservation Commission member. I only have one head, I don't have two. So I have been present at the creation and of the commission and here now tonight through all of the meetings, through all of the 4 years that we have been working on this. I don't think it's really a matter of ridicule that we have been working on it for 4 years and that it keeps changing. Because at every step of the way, we were transparent and we held open meetings. We had a lot of meetings. The document has been on the city's website in all of its forms so that the citizenry has had an opportunity for at least the last 2 years to read a very comprehensive document that kept adapting to the questions and concerns that were raised by people who came to the meetings. Debbie, I appreciate one of the landmark issues that changed was the fact that all work done on properties prior to the date of adoption of the document, which has not happened yet, will be grandfathered in. It's not pieces of the house, it's the whole house. It's the starting place for all of the houses in the historic district, the starting place for asking for permission, if you will, to make certain changes starts the day the document is adopted. And that still is an open question. I would like to point out that the meat of the document is all of the information that is concerned with obtaining a certificate of appropriateness. The certificate of appropriateness is either a major work, which requires the commission to adjudicate it, if you will, act in its capacity as a quasi-judicial branch, quasi-judicial, what's the word? Thank you, proceeding, exactly like the Board of Adjustments does currently. It's no different. So we're used to the Board of Adjustments and we're not used to Historic Preservation Commission, but it's the exact same process, and it ensures that it's a fair process. People have to have standing to come before the commission members and plead their case with legal help, with facts and figures, and it ensures, just like with the Board of Adjustments, that people have gotten a fair chance to plead their case. So that's a handful of major, a handful of, this is why I do it better when I write it down. It's a handful of items that need to go through the major certificate of appropriations process. I've less than 10, I think something between 5 and 10. The rest of the work that needs to be approved is a minor certificate of appropriateness, and it goes through staff. And that's a very short, quick process. It's more like an education. It's more like guidance. It's more like an advisory role. The development staff will be playing an advisory role to ensure that people understand the standards, for one thing. And it's very, very much less the role of the commission itself and the adjacent staff is to help people do what, the great irony, do what they have been doing for generations, which is taking care of Southport. Yes, it is. The standards are based on what people in the historic district are already doing. That's why, I mean, it took a long time. The commission members had to get educated by some commission members and also from the people who came to the meetings, which we always advocated and always appreciated. If we had a vision in our heads that changed over time because the people who live in the historic district and others who didn't educated us. People like Mr. Lambert, who had been lived in a historic district that was not burdensome, was not onerous. With your permission, I would like to read from a letter that was sent to the city, actually the clerk, from Mr. Ed Glenn. And if I could act as, and this is, I don't even know Mr. Glenn, but he has sent a letter. I have it with me. He's given me permission to read it. I can read 5 paragraphs. I think I'm the last speaker.
Yeah, I think you wanted it read at the public hearing, but I mean.
Well, I think it's longer than 5 minutes, than 3 minutes. If it can be read at the public hearing, that'd be great.
Yes.
But I think it is longer than 3 minutes.
Yeah, so we'll have it read at the public hearing.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else, Madam Clerk?
That's all.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak but did not speak? So I want to thank everyone for being here. This is it's a good night for Southport. Everyone who wanted to speak or to listen or to be a part of this, I'm glad that you came out. We've all learned a lot this evening. We know where you stand. We know how you feel. And we will do the right thing for our citizens and our city. There's a lot of emotion involved in it, as you can see, and we try to take the emotion out of it and try to be as logical as possible. But I know that emotions are a part of life, and I am moved that all of you came out tonight. Continue to call me, to text me, to email me, and again, with Tish and I both, we're so happy to be representing Southport, to be representing you, and we work for you, and we will continue to do so and move our city in the best way forward. So thank you. We'll see you on June 2nd and again on June 11th. So.